Thank you for coming for the screening of La Perla, the Pearl. This is actually part of an initiative that we started early on in the summer, and it is to showcase the work of John Steinbeck. And we partner very often with Kanye's bookstore, and Catherine is here. Thank you, Catherine. And so this is the last installment of this. It's also part of the preservation series, and it's our first collaboration with the Mexican Archive, Filmoteca UNAM. And I've decided to show the film twice because in its Spanish version and in its English version, because it was shot in both languages, it was a co-production, and they're both 35 millimeters. So, and to introduce the film, Dave Kehr is a curator at MoMA who actually curated an Emilio Fernandez retrospective for the museum.
Hi, thanks for coming out. Emilio Fernandez is a very interesting character who started out as an actor in the 1920s. And his most famous performance, you've probably seen more than you realize, he posed for the Oscar. He is actually the model. He was a relative of Dolores Del Rio, a Mexican actress who was working in Hollywood, and her husband was Cedric Gibbons, who designed the Oscar. So every day of your life, you've probably encountered Emilio Fernandez in one form or another. But he was became a director in the mid-30s. He was one of the few really indigenous performers in Mexico, where they preferred the Anglo look, the European look. And he became known as El Indio, which suggests how unique he was at that time. As you'll see, a very gifted filmmaker. He became a close associate of the famous muralists of the 1930s, and he shares a lot of the same stylistic tics with those folks. Where else? This is a interesting production in that it was a U.S. co-production made with RKO Pictures around the time that John Ford and John Steinbeck were hanging around RKO. Ford had made a film called The Fugitive with a Mexican crew, shot by the great Gabriel Figueroa, who is Mexico's leading cinematographer, starring Pedro Armendáriz, who you'll see here. And this seems to have been kind of not a sequel, but a follow-up to that film. Unique in that it was made in both Spanish and English language versions. RKO went on and produced a number of other Spanish language films, an interesting chapter in their history that isn't really very well known. We have 2 or 3 of them at MoMA that still need to be restored. Yeah, I don't know what else I can say. The source material was just incredibly popular when it came out. It was a huge hit, that short story, and a lot of us here probably were assigned it at some point during our junior high school experiences. Yeah, I think it certainly it gets Steinbeck incredibly well, and yeah. So let's have a look at La Perla. All right, great.